Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 188. We're going to discuss Werewolves, released in 2009. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I had not seen this before. As always, we start with the prominent crew and cast. You can also find links to a more complete credit list in the show notes. This was written and directed by Michael Wirth. Key makeup artist was Tina Cohen. Michael Wirth directed his first short film with a Super 8 camera at the age of 10. He lived in his truck for months after moving to LA while taking small acting roles, including as an extra in Teen Wolf 2 and working odd jobs. Wirth appeared in low-budget action films such as Final Impact and Fists of Iron, and TV series such as Acapulco Heat and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Trained in various martial arts, including Aikido, Northern Shaolin Kung Fu, and Tang Soo Do, he often incorporated his skills into his roles. As a filmmaker, Wirth wrote, directed, and starred in independent projects, including Killing Cupid, God's Ears, and Appleseed. Tina Cohen is a makeup artist known for her work on low-budget horror and action projects. Her notable credits include films such as Seven Mummies and California Scheming. The cast includes John Saxon as Tony Ford, Tim Thomerson as Frank Bergman, Michael Wirth as Jake Gabriel, Adrienne Barbeau as Gail Cash, Natasha Alam as Erica Moore, Christy Klanos as Justine, Siri Baruch as Casey, Dan Southworth as Clay, Edward Beckford as an Iraqi werewolf, billed as Edward M. Beckford Jr., and Manav Wadhwa as an Iraqi werewolf. We first covered John Saxon when we discussed My Mom's a Werewolf. We first covered Adrienne Barbeau when we discussed Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Tim Thomerson served in the Army National Guard before becoming a prop man and set builder at San Diego's Old Globe Theater. He studied acting with Stella Adler and did stand-up comedy. Thomerson gained early notice for his dual-gender role as Gene in the short-lived sci-fi parody series Quark, and really broke into film with Robert Altman's A Wedding. He became a cult favorite as the tough, wisecracking, time-traveling cop, Jack Death, in the ongoing Trancers film series. Other notable film credits include Fade to Black, Uncommon Valor, Near Dark, Cherry 2000, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and a personal favorite, Iron Eagle. He was a regular guest star on numerous TV shows. Natasha Alam is a Russian Uzbek actress and model known for supporting roles in American television and genre films. Alam began modeling as a teenager before relocating to Moscow and then LA to pursue acting. She landed guest spots on shows like The Bold and the Beautiful, CSI, and Entourage, before her breakthrough came as the seductive vampire Yvette in HBO's True Blood, a recurring role that showcased her commanding screen presence. Christy Klanos has mostly done guest roles on TV, with a few smaller film roles like Bewitched or Spider-Man 3. Siri Baruch is known for supporting roles in low-budget horror and indie films. Prominent credits include Glass Trap, Unholy, Mega Snake, and The Foursome. Dan Southworth is an American actor, stunt performer, and martial artist. A lifelong martial artist with black belts in multiple disciplines, including karate, taekwondo, and wushu, Southworth began his career in stunts and fight choreography. He broke into acting with recurring roles in the Power Rangers franchise, most notably as Eric Myers, the Quantum Ranger in Power Rangers Time Force and its crossovers. His prowess led to voice and motion capture for a ton of video games. Other credits include Act of Valor and Blade of the 47 Ronin, and recurring roles on Kickin' It and Divergence. A fan favorite at conventions, he embodies the high-energy action hero with genuine martial arts credibility. Edward Beckford started as an actor playing unnamed bit characters, and he still does that occasionally, but he has many more credits as a first assistant director on films like The Heart That Sings, North Boulevard, and Love the Skin You're In. I went in hoping to like this. The idea of using lycanthropy as a metaphor for PTSD sounds promising on paper. Unfortunately, it completely falls apart in execution here. The story squanders its potential on pointless thematic detours and bizarrely overloads the screen with too many werewolves. A tighter focus would have helped immensely. Either follow one or two soldiers struggling with the curse after returning home, or center on a squad being hunted by a single werewolf in a combat zone. Instead, we get a chaotic, unfocused mess. John Saxon gives a committed performance as the old general, and there are fleeting moments that hint at what could have been. I even found myself wishing the entire film had been about his character tracking down werewolves, but those small bright spots aren't enough to save it. Overall, Werewolves is a disappointing misfire that I can't recommend. Skip it. I read while doing research that Wirth called this his love letter to Predator meets an American Werewolf in London. And I can see the Predator if I squint. We have the military unit facing a predatory hunter in the form of the Iraqi werewolves, but that part's over within 10 minutes. And I don't see an American werewolf in London at all. So let's cover the synopsis. A man furiously scribbles something onto a legal pad before blowing his own brains out. I have no idea what this has to do with the rest of the film. A squad of soldiers in Afghanistan is attacked by two feral-looking dudes. The squad has an unusually high percentage of female soldiers in it. 6 months later, Jake Gabriel is home, living under the fake name of Lawrence Talbot, trying to make sense of his war experiences. He's attending AA meetings. He drinks to keep the inner beast under control. Two mysterious dudes check into a local motel. A real piece of work hits a naked woman with his car. Rather than report it to the cops, he stuffs the body into his trunk. Her name is Erica, and she's one of the soldiers, and it turns out she's not dead. She meets up with two other female soldiers from Afghanistan in a dive bar. The women turn into werewolves and kill everyone in the bar but a pregnant woman. Meanwhile, in San Francisco's Chinatown, the two old dudes are trying to defend another soldier from a werewolf attacker. They accidentally killed the victim instead of the attacker. They do capture Jake, who had arrived too late to help his friend. The old guys are military men, General Ford and Frank Bergman, who are hunting werewolves. They want Jake to team up with them. John Kreese shows up and joins Team Old Guy for about 6 seconds before Erica shoots him in the belly. A gunfight breaks out with no further victims, but it does allow Jake to escape. He ends up running into the dude werewolf, where they kung fu fight in an empty room. Before this fight ends, the 3 female werewolves show up, so Jake runs. Ford buys a bunch of illegal army surplus weapons. The girls capture Jake. Erica almost seduces Jake before she gets too wolfy. Jake tries to return to his fake life. He can't, even with his sponsor's help. Gale tells the two-wolf parable. The werewolf pack tracks Jake. Team Old Guy tracks them. Erica wants to grab Jake and disappear. The other 2 girls want to fight everyone. It all ends in a confrontation at an AA meeting in a church, which is certainly a choice. Jake lures Dude Werewolf outside, where he goes good werewolf on him. They have another kung fu fight that Jake wins. Team Old Guy takes out one female werewolf. Erica takes out the other one. I think that's what happened. Jake and Erica turn into full wolves and live in the wild. And then Elvis shows up? Okay. The werewolf transformations and makeup are notably minimalistic and low budget, which can occasionally work in favor of subtlety, but it kind of falls flat here. The werewolves undergo almost no visible change. They rely on elongated fingernails, protruding fangs, pointed ears, and nose tips just painted black. Rather than evoking menace or genuine horror, these elements come across as comical and unconvincing, diminishing any sense of threat and making the creatures appear more ridiculous than fearsome. I get the sense the FX crew made this choice because they had to do so many werewolves. Too much time. The werewolf lore diverges from traditional mythology by incorporating a military twist. It frames lycanthropy as a contagious werewolf virus acquired during a special forces mission overseas. The curse is transmitted through bites or deep scratches from infected beings, aligning with some classic rules, but presented here as a biological affliction rather than a supernatural one. Notably, the full moon appears irrelevant as a trigger. Instead, transformations are influenced by emotional states or moods, allowing shifts to occur at will or under stress. There is no mention of silver as a vulnerability at all, further distancing it from the folkloric staples. Infected individuals retain full human intelligence and the ability to speak even while in their partial wolf form, enabling coordinated actions and dialogue. However, there is the implication that the virus makes the infected more prone to violence. The government views the afflicted soldiers as potential assets, seeking to capture and weaponize their enhanced abilities for military purposes, a plot device that evokes comparisons to films like Universal Soldier, but with added fur and fangs. So let's talk about the best part of the movie. In the world of low-budget horror, Werewolves does make a surprisingly earnest effort to fuse supernatural thrills with serious thematic commentary. The story follows U.S. soldiers ambushed in the Middle East who return home carrying a werewolf curse. Beneath the howls and transformations lies an allegory, lycanthropy standing in for combat-related post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. The metaphor is not subtle, delivering a raw portrait of how war wounds soldiers, turning them into monsters that society fears and often fails. Let's look at how the film builds this analogy. The werewolf curse functions as a blunt but effective symbol for combat trauma and the military's often cavalier treatment of its personnel. It begins overseas in the chaos of deployment, then erupts back home with physical and psychological symptoms the soldiers can't control. This parallels how PTSD can seize a veteran's life, converting ordinary moments into triggers for rage, flashbacks, or disassociation. The film implicitly criticizes an institution that sends people into danger yet offers little support upon their return. For a shoestring budget production, this pointed framing feels remarkably bold, even if it also comes across a little heavy-handed. Every returning soldier is haunted by the ambush, and their transformations express rage they desperately try and usually fail to suppress. Jake Gabriel, the central figure, keeps outbursts in check with heavy drinking, but this crutch fails to help the others. This mirrors PTSD symptoms like hyperarousal and intrusive memories that can cause veterans to lash out unpredictably, pushing away family and friends. Jake's crushing survivor's guilt over leaving comrades behind further illustrates a common hallmark of combat trauma, relentless questioning of why he survived when others did not. The soldiers are not portrayed as villains, but as victims of circumstance, their identities eroded by what they've endured. Adding an explicit voice to the theme, Ford remarks on the monsters we create in war, driving home the idea that the true horror lies in the lasting psychological damage violent conflict inflicts. The metaphor also reaches into the personal devastation felt by families. A poignant phone call between older veteran General Ford and his daughter and granddaughter reveals the emotional toll of repeated absences and duty. Ford reflects with regret on time lost, while another soldier, Frank Bergman, confronts him for never truly being present. These moments highlight PTSD's tendencies towards emotional numbness, avoidance, and detachment, behaviors that strain and often shatter relationships, leaving veterans isolated even back in civilian life. Trauma, the film suggests, spreads like a contagion into domestic spheres, making genuine reintegration feel out of reach. Crucially, Werewolves offers no example of a soldier who returns unscathed. Every character touched by the war carries its burden. Even the hunters live in a world colored by paranoia and violence, implying that mere proximity to conflict leaves permanent marks. There is no escape, no veteran who simply discards the experience like a pair of fatigues. This universality reinforces the film's core argument. Unlike a werewolf curse that might end with a silver bullet, PTSD requires ongoing recognition and care. Now, in the end, Werewolves doesn't reinvent horror, but its lycanthropy as PTSD metaphor lands with unexpected weight. By linking the supernatural to real scars, uncontrollable rage, survivor's guilt, family estrangement, and institutional neglect, it reminds viewers that monsters are made, they're not born. For a modest 2009 made-for-TV movie, it is a thoughtful, if unsubtle, howl against the dehumanizing costs of war. Now, while Werewolves aspires to comment on combat trauma, it often also stumbles into muddled territory, particularly when it introduces gender elements. Now, the film's central conceit, lycanthropy as a stand-in for PTSD, has its moments of blunt effectiveness, but it's complicated and arguably undermined by a subplot that pits female werewolves against their male counterparts in what feels like an unintended or perhaps poorly executed battle of the sexes. This layer adds intrigue, but raises questions about the script's intention. Ultimately, it dilutes the PTSD allegory without offering a coherent alternative. The film opens with a lighthearted touch. A football game between male and female soldiers, establishing camaraderie and equality in the pre-infection days. This mixed-gender squad is ambushed, where they're infected by mysterious dogmen. Back home, the transformations diverge sharply along gender lines. The female soldiers embrace their new powers, forming a cohesive pack. They operate as a unit, hunting down the more solitary male werewolves. In one notable sequence, the she-wolves descend upon rowdy bar patrons, dispatching the aggressive men while notably sparing the pregnant woman, a moment that could be read as selective justice against misogyny, but just comes across as haphazard. This pack dynamic contrasts starkly with the males. Jake resists the change, suppressing his urge with drugs and alcohol in a clear nod to self-medication among traumatized veterans, while the other infected men are isolated. The women, portrayed as fierce, sexy, and unified, actively pursue Jake, intending to recruit him as their alpha, with Erica openly pining for him in a mix of romantic and predatory longing. This complicates the gender divide further. It's not pure antagonism, but a twisted courtship, where the females want to pull the reluctant male into their empowered primal collective. So, how does this fit into the film's primary metaphor of lycanthropy as PTSD? Not very well. The PTS angle works best with Jake's arc, his survivor's guilt, rage, and the struggle for control mirroring the hyperarousal, avoidance, and identity loss common in combat veterans. But the gendered split introduces a confounding element. The female werewolves aren't depicted as tormented by guilt or loss of control. They revel in their transformation. Their pack hunts solo males not out of trauma-driven rage, but with purposeful, almost ideological coordination. If the curse represents wars and lingering damage, why do the women adapt so readily while the men flounder? This discrepancy leaves the gender subplot disconnected from the trauma theme. None of the male characters do anything overtly egregious to justify the she-wolves' targeted aggression. The Bard patrons are crude jerks, sure, but they're hardly war criminals warranting execution. Jake, the film's moral center, is portrayed sympathetically as a victim fighting his demons. And without clear provocation from the men, the female's actions come across as unmotivated hostility. One interpretation the film clumsily gestures towards is toxic masculinity, perhaps implying that men, socialized towards individualism and suppression, handle trauma poorly, while women bond and empower each other. But this falls flat because the script doesn't develop it. The men's toxic traits aren't explored beyond anything but generic soldier banter. Alternatively, the portrayal veers into the opposite ditch, positing that women are inherently crazy or vengeful once unleashed, that they embrace monstrosity where men resist it. The sexy, predatory she-wolves hunting men evokes tropes of femme fatales or hysterical revenge fantasies, especially with Erica's obsessive pining thrown in for romantic confusion. Neither reading feels intentional or subversive. It's more likely a byproduct of B-movie exploitation, amping up action and allure without considering the thematic cohesion. Or it's possible a prior version of the script originally intended to focus more on real and perceived gender issues in the military. Then this theme was abandoned in the next draft, but remnants were unintentionally left over. In the end, these gender dynamics fracture what could have been a straightforward, if blunt, PTSD allegory. The film hints at deeper ideas, how trauma affects reintegration differently, or the military's mixed gender realities, but it never really commits. Instead, it prioritizes thrills over insight. It's a reminder that even in low-budget horror, layered ambitions need careful handling to avoid biting their own tail. Finally, let's talk about John Saxon in a little bit. This is one of his last films. The Brooklyn-born actor with a career spanning 6 decades, over 200 roles, elevated material with his quiet intensity, rugged charisma, and unflinching professionalism. As a teen idol in the 50s to iconic roles alongside Bruce Lee in Enter the Dragon, and as Lieutenant Thompson in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, he left an indelible mark until his passing in 2020 at age 83. Now let's be real. Werewolves has uneven effects, straightforward plotting, and mostly serviceable B-movie acting. It's fun trash, until John Saxon shows up. At 73, in one of his final roles, Saxon plays General Tony Ford with the gravitas of a prestige drama. He doesn't phone it in. He invests the character with weary authority, moral depth, and the understanding pathos that the script hardly earns. His presence makes the film far more watchable than it deserves, carrying it on his seasoned shoulders. This shines in quieter moments, such as the phone call with his family and his climactic speech on the cost of making monsters, transforming a blunt war trauma metaphor into something that's almost poignant. Paired with Tim Thomerson, their bickering lived-in chemistry feels authentically battle-worn. Contemporary reviewers often cited the two veterans as the film's lone saving grace. Saxon was a workhorse, appearing in everything from Golden Age dramas to Italian gialli, primetime soaps, and genre favorites. Even in modest sci-fi productions late in his life, he treated every line as if it mattered. In Werewolves, his swan song to substantial roles, he reminded us why he endured. He made the ordinary weighty and the monstrous human. According to the adage, there are no small parts, there are only small actors. John Saxon was never small. Rest easy, Mr. Saxon, you've earned it. Taken together, Werewolves is a fascinating little mess. A sincere stab at war trauma commentary, complicated by a confusing gender subplot, and saved by one legend who refused to let it be forgettable. For a 2009 cable monster movie, that's more than most can manage. So, if you like Lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan to discuss Wolfsbane from 2009. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back here next episode.